it will fail. And it will come down.
Years after people. Moscow's colorful St. Basil's Cathedral still stands in Red Square. In fact, the disappearance of man has actually helped preserve it. In the time of humans, the foundations of the 16th century structure were weakened by vibrations from tank parades and rock concerts. A recent Russian government report warned, if nothing is done, in 100 years we could lose it.
Buildings seem a lot like people. I mean, most people don't die instantly. You know, one thing starts to fail, another thing starts to fail. And that's probably what happens with most of our buildings. It's a cascading effect.
St. Basil's death knell comes from decades of water damage. Cracked drainage pipes spill out rain and snow, forming a swamp that turns to ice in the winter, pushing against the outside walls. A final crack sends the central bell tower crashing into one of the domes. The eastern wall gives way. More domes fall, pulling wood, brick, and sacred icons down into the swamp. Another icon of the silver screen. The landmark Hollywood sign is coming down. The quake shears off the corroded bolts that once held the letters securely to girders sunk in the bedrock. Faster than 300 years after people, the Statue of Liberty suffers a fatal relapse of an old complaint: galvanic corrosion. Her torch-bearing arm is the first to fall. Other parts quickly follow. Here on the ocean floor, these shattered symbols of hope become the fossils of the future.
The hand with a torch would, by that initial ballistic trajectory, embed itself maybe up to half a meter into the mud. And that impression may well stay, just in the way that footprints are preserved in mud and sand.
Thousands of miles away in Philadelphia, the Liberty Bell is about to ring one last time. Made of bronze, it can last thousands of years, but the structural integrity is threatened by its large crack and a much less visible one that could be just as damaging.
You can actually see that the hairline extends all the way up past the inscription to the crown of the bell, and that's the bell's greatest weakness.
It's the wooden support that holds the bell where the final split will begin. Made from elm, 75 years of moisture and insects have left it too weak to hold the weight of the one-ton bell. Though split in two, the symbol of freedom remains clearly recognizable. Long after skyscrapers in cities like Shanghai have crumbled, other sites remain. Although it appears eternal, time is running out for the Taj Mahal. This world-famous building in the city of Agra was built in the 17th century by Emperor Shah Jahan in memory of his wife. Although it has marble walls 15 feet thick in places, it stands on clay over India's most dangerous seismic zone. As a giant quake liquefies the clay soil, the minarets fall away, and the stone and marble collapse. For 250 years after people, St. Louis's Gateway Arch has worn its stainless steel skin as armor against the dragon's breath of corrosion. But stainless steel isn't invincible.
It doesn't last forever. The mechanism for final failure will probably be around the center of the arch at the top. That's its thinnest point.
The thinnest points are the two sections that form the keystone. Steel triangles 17 feet long by 18 feet high, the last pieces to be installed. The keystone is so critical to the structure's stability that until it was inserted, a temporary stabilizing truss had to be used to keep the two legs from collapsing. Before the pieces were lifted into place on the 28th of October 1965, a Roman Catholic priest and a rabbi blessed the keystone. But now the prayers of man are of little help. The keystone buckles and plummets from the structure.
The two legs of the arch would not be able to stand on their own, and they would fall down to the ground.
South, the MetLife building is also falling to pieces. When it opened in 1963, the building's 58 floors meant it stood as the 7th tallest in the United States. But it will soon give up its place on Park Avenue.
Because it's built in a rather exposed area, it's going to get more wind, it's going to get more rain than a typical New York City skyscraper.
Already weakened by the methane explosion at its base, 6 decades of neglect have also assaulted the building's steel and glass facade.
Death will come a piece at a time as sections of the framework peel away.
This means the neighboring Grand Central building is in the line of fire.
Grand Central Terminal has a near mortal enemy right next door. And I certainly expect to see sections of the facade of the MetLife building actually falling onto the roof.
As glass and steel rain down, has Grand Central Terminal reached the end of the line? After people. In New York City, the MetLife building, after enduring a gas fire and shedding steel from its top floors for decades, finally breaks. A giant section falls southward, tumbling onto the roof of Grand Central Terminal. Despite the attack from the MetLife building, Grand Central's 4 granite walls still stand.
The outside walls are actually very thick granite. They hold themselves up. The granite itself is the structure of the building. Here you have a building, Grand Central Terminal, that was more than 50 years old when the MetLife building, originally the Pan Am building, was built next to it. And yet, even with that head start on aging, Grand Central Terminal will still be recognizable as a building 250 years, maybe even 500 years after people.